For Shaquille Moore, it's a little bit more complicated, I think, with Shaq. I think Shaq wants to be a full-time point guard, and I think with the amount of guards on this roster, the amount of ball dominant guards, I don't think that was ever going to happen. I think from a personality standpoint, he doesn't like his personality is a little different than a lot of the people in the program from a coaching staff perspective. I think there was some clash there. And then there were a couple incidents where I know Shaq was probably frustrated. The one particularly that comes to my mind is the second Carolina game where he only played 4 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm sure that left a bad taste in his mouth for whatever the reason was. Especially when you consider in the first matchup, the game that he had and the memorable moments he had in that game. So I think those are probably a couple of the things that kind of led to this, probably was like, look, I love Raleigh. I love NC State. I want to be back here. Went to spring workout, said, you know what? It's just not going to work. I gotta move on. And he decided to do so. And he's still trying to figure out his next move, which, by the time you're listening to this, it might already be decided. I'm sure it's moving quickly. I know he's had schools like Memphis, Mississippi State, Western Kentucky. There's a lot of schools that have reached out and are actively recruiting him right now. But with him leaving, you kind of miss that edginess you got from him. I know a lot of the other guards on this roster don't have that defensive tenacity that he does out at the top of the press, trying to create havoc and stuff like that. And he obviously had some big moments and some memorable moments, but luckily, the reason he's leaving will ultimately be the reason why, the shoes will be filled. There's a lot of guards, whether it be one of the guys that we talk about, like a few of the guys that we talk about that are coming in. Cam Hayes showed a lot of progression late in his freshman year. And then Darion Sebron is showing that, he can be a point guard at times too. So I think they'll be fine without him, but they're definitely going to miss some aspects of his game.
Yeah, and I think one of the more difficult parts of this, one of the more difficult elements of Shaq leaving too, was he had kind of told this is all behind the scenes, obviously, but he had kind of told the staff, 2 weeks prior to him exiting the program that, hey, I'm planning on being here. I'm planning on sticking around. And obviously things had changed, during those 2 weeks of workouts, but it really put NC State in a weird situation where they thought, hey, the roster's full at this point. There was some players that they were going after beforehand. Obviously, when you're a head coach, you tell the players like, hey, look, if you're going to come in, we'll find a spot for you. We'll find a way to get you in. But all the roster spots are full at that point. And it left them in a weird situation where they're trying to recruit the portal in case something happens. And then, they find out, hey, he's sticking around, we're good to move forward. And then things change again. I mean, how difficult did that make it for the staff and for the team as a whole?
It was tough. And I don't want anyone to think that Shaq just said he was staying and then all of a sudden he was leaving. Like, he had fully intended to stay. And I think, those few weeks of practice, he kind of realized like, hey, look, like the cons are outweighing the pros for me here. I feel like I got to go. And, he made the decision. But that doesn't make it any easier for NC State from just a roster construction standpoint. Luckily, they're sitting in a position where, 12 of 13 scholarships are full. Positional depth, they have bodies at every position, whether it be in the front court with guys like Manny, EB, and Jalen Gibson and some of the newcomers coming in, or in the backcourt with Cam Hayes, the freshman, Casey Morsell now. So, they're going to be fine, but they would have liked to have that flexibility of like, hey, if you're going to leave, like leave, but that's the way this works. And I'm sure there's going to be names in the portal that come about over the course of the rest of the spring and summer that they wouldn't have had a chance at if they had filled it up earlier. So, it could be a blessing in disguise with who might become available later on in the spring and summer. There are always a few interesting names that enter that portal around this time. So we'll kind of see how it shakes out, but it's definitely not the most ideal situation, but it's still something they can make work.